This might be a bit controversial, but we all know Assassin's Creed isn't just another game series. It's an entire world of history, philosophy, and secrets. And one of the most interesting parts of that world that not many people talk about is religion. Yes, religion. And that raises a pretty unique question. What is the religion of every protagonist in the Assassin's Creed games? Did they follow any or didn't at all? From AC1 to AC Shadows, we'll talk about everything in this video. So let's get into it. Let's begin our video in chronological order with Kassandra. If you've played Odyssey, you know she's a character we spend over 200 hours with, provided if we count all the side quests and exploration. That gives us more than enough insight into her personality and even her beliefs. Early on, Kassandra clearly believes in the Greek gods and deities. You can see it in the way she talks to NPCs and reacts to myths and rituals around her. And because of her connection to the spirit of Leonidas, some even perceive her as a demigod herself. But as her journey continues, she learns the truth about her heritage, thanks to Protagonist and the staff he gives her. After that, Kassandra's entire worldview changes. She eventually realizes that the so-called gods are actually members of the first civilization, a group of ancient beings who created powerful artifacts that survived through time and ended up being worshipped by humans across different cultures. Anyhow, because she grew up in Greece, she continues to interpret the Isu and their power through the lens of Greek culture. So in short, before learning the truth, Kassandra followed the traditional Greek polytheism, like most people of her time. But after discovering the reality of the Isu, she stops believing in any god at all. And from that point onward, she's essentially an atheist, and one of the few characters in the series who truly understands the origins of everything. Coming to Bayek, his case is a bit complicated, but also one of the most grounded in the whole series. From the very beginning, we see that he is a devout follower of Egyptian polytheism. His faith in the gods is unshakable, which you can see in his dialogues, the way he speaks after assassinations, and even in small moments during exploration. Now, we know you might be wondering, when Bayek was exposed to the Isu, did he stop believing in the Egyptian gods? Well, the answer to that is no. Let's break that down. In the quest where he hunts down the order member known as the hyena inside the Pyramid of Giza, and that pyramid later turns out to be a first civilization site, while he was there, a message from the Isu starts playing and Bayek even interacts with them but stays quiet. And when confronted by the hyena, he literally says that these messages are not meant for them.
Didn't you? These symbols only needed to be learned.
It is not meant for us.
That line alone shows how he views these ancient messages, not as divine revelations, but as things beyond his concern. Basically, you can say that he hears them, but he doesn't let them shake his belief. There's also another possible explanation that Bayek couldn't actually hear the Isu messages at all, and that they were only meant for Layla in the modern day. This explains why whenever you interact with the first civilization technology while exploration, Bayek just stays quiet. Though this theory doesn't hold much weight, but it still adds an interesting layer to his story. But what truly stands out is that even when Bayek witnesses first civilization technology, or miracles as he calls them, he always views them through his Egyptian faith. His worldview never breaks. In fact, he doubles down on it. Later on, it's even revealed through a letter in Assassin's Creed Valhalla that he took the name Amun, who is in fact one of Egypt's chief deities, further proving how deeply his faith defined him. Not only that, but the name Hidden One itself is related to the Egyptian mythology. So no matter what kind of ancient power or Isu artifact he comes across, Bayek remains a true believer. He sees every strange event as a reflection of his god's will, not a challenge to it. And before we move on to the next assassin, here's a little question for you. Since Bayek lived through the early rise of Christianity, how do you think he would have reacted to it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, this one's really interesting because we all know Basim isn't just an ordinary assassin. He's literally a reincarnation of an Isu. But before diving into that, let's clear up the obvious things first. The game takes place right in the golden age of Islam, in the heart of Baghdad, which already gives us a pretty good idea of what religion Basim might follow. Throughout the story, he uses phrases like Alhamdulillah and Barakallah, both clear signs that he is a Muslim. But the real question is, which Muslim? While others go even further and claim he belonged to the Nizari Ismaili sect, the same group that inspired the later assassins. But there's one problem with that theory. The Nizari Ismaili sect didn't even exist yet. It was founded centuries later in the late 1000s, while Basim's story takes place around 861 CE. Now here's where things get even more layered. Before joining the Hidden Ones, Basim was a thief, a crime that Islam strictly condemns. So you could say he wasn't the most religious man early on. And even after joining the Brotherhood, we don't really see him praying. Some people might say that the assassin's struggle itself was a kind of jihad, which means fighting for the greater good, but that's still up for debate. The biggest mystery though is what happened to his fate after discovering his true origin as Loki's reincarnation. Did he stop believing altogether? The answer is somewhere in the middle, because in Assassin's Creed Valhalla's prologue there's a small but powerful detail. During the grand feast for Sigurd's arrival, if you walk up to Basim, you will see him sitting quietly, not drinking alcohol. And when you ask him about it, he simply says that his culture doesn't allow that. That moment alone tells us that somewhere inside, Basim still holds onto his spiritual roots. But does he still consider himself a Muslim in the modern day? That's something we may never know, because, well, Ubisoft doesn't seem too interested in telling us about him anymore. Assassin's Creed Valhalla follows the story of Eivor, a Viking warrior searching for glory, and since she's a Viking, the first thing that comes into your mind is Odin. She's a devoted follower of Norse paganism, which shouldn't come as a surprise. That's how Vikings were in real life, and it's exactly how they're portrayed in the game. You can visit sacred altars, offer gifts to the gods, and even pray for protection and luck before major quests. And the entire world constantly reminds you that you are a Viking. But like every Assassin's Creed story, there's always more beneath the surface. And yes, the Isu stuff is there. Eivor eventually discovers that she's actually the reincarnation of Odin. Because of this, she begins experiencing visions and memories of her life as Odin, bleeding into her present reality. But here's the thing, instead of losing faith, these revelations actually strengthen her belief. When she finally realizes that Odin is trying to manipulate her, she fights back and traps him within her own mind, or at least that's what she used to think. As time passes and she grows older, she starts to accept the truth. Odin isn't gone, he is a part of her. And up to that point, it's fair to say that she's still following the Norse pantheon. Although later, when she travels to Vinland, Odin finally reveals to her the full truth about the world. And you might think, okay, this is where she abandons her faith, right? But no. Because in the modern day, when her skeleton is discovered, she's buried with her shield and axe, the ultimate symbols of a Viking warrior's honor and belief. Meaning that even after everything, the visions, the gods, the truth about the Isu, Eivor remained a devoted Norse follower till her final breath. Coming to the OG here, Altair. From the very beginning, Altair never really seems like the follower type. He doesn't even fully obey the tenets of the creed, and since religion requires deep faith and spiritual commitment, it's safe to say he wasn't the most devout person either. But we can't just leave it that, can we? The game takes place in Syria during the Holy Wars, and by now, most of you probably know that the assassins were inspired by Hassan al-Sabah, the real-life founder of the Hashashin order. They were Shia Muslims in real life following the Nizari sect of Islam. So yes, that would technically make Altair a Muslim by birth. However, since he was raised within the Brotherhood, that was the only world he ever knew. The assassins became his family, his faith, and his way of life. That is, until he began to uncover the greater truth, the one that existed far beyond the Templars and Assassins. After killing Al-Mualim and studying the Apple of Eden, Altair gained vast knowledge. He had glimpses of the past, the future, and the truth behind religion itself. In his Codex writings, which we later see in Assassin's Creed 2, Altair even states that those who blindly follow religion are mere fools. That line tells us everything. It means Altair completely rejected the idea of God and religion. And honestly, you cannot blame him, because in the Assassin's Creed universe, gods don't really exist. This statement caused quite a debate among the fans, where some believe he became agnostic while others think he was a straight-up atheist. Nothing is officially confirmed, but considering all the evidence, it's fair to say that Altair fits the atheist category. In short, he was never truly religious, but once he learned the truth, it only strengthened that belief. We all know and love him, but his religious and spiritual side is something that rarely gets talked about. His game takes place during the Italian Renaissance, a time when Catholicism was basically the heartbeat of Europe. And since Ezio was born in Florence, it's safe to say he was a Catholic by birth and baptism, which was the usual practice back then. In his younger days though, Ezio was far from religious, and honestly, who could blame him? His father and brothers were hanged right in front of him. After witnessing that, anyone can lose his sanity, so he swore revenge and spent most of his adult life hunting down the people responsible. But after each kill and through every discovery, he started learning more about the greater conflict between the assassins and the Templars, until finally confronting Rodrigo Borgia in the Vatican City. There, not only did he defeat him, but also opened the vault and saw something that changed everything. A holographic message from Minerva, a being from the Isu civilization, who revealed the truth about their history with humanity. And in that moment, Ezio realized that much of what people worshipped, the myths, gods, and religions, all came from the influence of this ancient race. In the later games like Brotherhood and Revelations, the story doesn't really dive deep into his beliefs anymore, since those games focus more on Altair and the Masyafkis. Still, we do see that Ezio respected religious places and the people who followed faith. But to keep things simple, did he remain a Catholic after the main story? Probably not. It's more likely that he moved toward a more humanitarian and philosophical outlook, focusing on the freedom and well-being of others rather than organized religion. What we do know for sure is that Ezio understood that in the Assassin's Creed universe, every religion is directly or indirectly linked to the first civilization. As for whether he fully renounced Catholicism or became an atheist, that's never ever shown or written anywhere in the official lore. Both Naoe and Yasuke are complete opposites, not just in gameplay or personality, but also in faith and belief. Let's start with Naoe, since her side is pretty simple and actually quite obvious. As we've seen in the cinematic trailer and throughout the game, Naoe is a native Japanese woman, and on multiple occasions we see her practicing a blend of both Shintoism and Buddhism, whether it's meditating quietly or praying at shrines and temples. This makes her a follower of Shinbutsu Shugo. I hope that I pronounced that right. Anyhow, it's basically the fusion of both Shinto and Buddhist beliefs, and actually it was super common in Japan before the Meiji period. Now some people speculate that maybe Naoe only does these rituals just to blend in with the people around her, since in those days, not practicing religion openly could get you criticized or seen as disrespectful. But honestly, that theory doesn't really make any sense. Her actions come off as genuine, not just cultural obligation. Now coming to Yasuke, this is where things get really interesting, because unlike Naoe, Yasuke was a real historical figure, and that's where all the speculation begins. Some historians believe that Yasuke might have originally been Muslim, since he was native to East Africa, and during that era, Islam was quite prominent there due to Muslim sultanates and trade routes. So it's pretty likely that Yasuke was born a Muslim. But things take a twist when he arrives in Japan with the Jesuit monks. It's heavily implied both in the game and through history that he was forcibly converted to Christianity. There's even a conversation between Oda Nobunaga and Yasuke where Yasuke talks about how they claim to spread the word of God but bring the sword instead. That one line says a lot about how he viewed his supposed faith. Then after he serves Oda and becomes a samurai, we start seeing him embrace Japanese culture and their traditions, similar to Naoe. In the game, he's shown praying at shrines, bowing before statues, and generally following Japanese customs. And as for the Isu side of things, Shadows didn't really dive deep into that layer like previous titles, which means their faiths and beliefs stay intact and unshaken throughout the story. So if we sum it up for Yasuke, he was born a Muslim, later converted to Christianity, and finally embraced Japanese traditions in his later life. Edward was never really the religious type to begin with. His heart was always set on money, glory, and adventure. Now, if we talk about religion, he was born an Anglican, or in simple words, a Christian. But honestly, faith was never a top priority for him. Throughout the story, we don't really see much of Edward's spiritual side. And for those who say that he found redemption in the end, sure he did, but that redemption was more moral than spiritual. He finally understood the true meaning of the words "nothing is true, everything is permitted." And from that moment on, he openly aligned himself with the assassin cause. And also considering how much he learned about those who came before, it's likely he either stopped stopped practicing his faith altogether or simply didn't take it seriously anymore. But again, that's all speculation, because religion was never really the main focus in his story. As for his son Haytham, things are a bit more clear. He was forced into the Templar Order at a young age, and given how much the Templars knew about the first civilization and their artifacts, combined with Haytham's cold, rational mindset, it's safe to say he was most likely an atheist. Connor's fate is pretty straightforward. He was born into the Kenyan Kehaka tribe, better known to most people as the Mohawk. And because of that, his worldview is deeply shaped by the Iroquois Confederacy and their spiritual traditions. He believes in the Great Spirit, a divine force that was common among many Native American tribes, a being that represents balance, harmony, and the natural order of life. You can actually see this belief reflected in his behavior throughout Assassin's Creed 3. Like the moment when he touches the apple and encounters Juno, he doesn't see her as a goddess or an alien being, but as a spirit, and follows her guidance. You can say that in a way, that encounter is what made him join the Assassins in the first place. And after he joins the Brotherhood officially, his Mohawk values naturally align with the Assassins' code of freedom, justice, and the right to live unshackled. Later, when he learns about the Templars' next move, he performs that symbolic act, which was burying an axe in a tree, but for convenience he used Achilles' pillar instead. Anyhow, it was a powerful gesture of choosing purpose over revenge. And as he grows and experiences the outside world, he learns about the other people, their religions, their customs, and he respects all of them. Because for Connor, faith isn't about institutions or temples, it's about the balance of the world and one's place in it. So no matter wherever he goes, he stays true to his roots, never straying from the traditional values his people and faith have taught him. Like many Irishmen of his time, Shay was a devout Christian of Roman heritage. Even his full name, Shay Patrick Cormac, carries the weight of Catholic tradition, and throughout Assassin's Creed Rogue, we can sense his faith in the way he speaks and acts. After witnessing injustice, especially the deaths of innocents during the Lisbon earthquake, Shay often uses words like righteousness, sin, and judgment, a vocabulary deeply rooted in a religious upbringing. His moral compass constantly points towards doing what he believes is right, and that's exactly what leads him to join the Templars, because he was convinced that their cause could prevent more suffering. So yes, Shay can be identified as an Irish Catholic. However, there are faint hints that he might also carry a touch of Protestant influence, as seen in his subtle remarks toward the Redcoats when he first meets George Monroe. But regardless of denomination, one thing that remains certain is that Shay Cormac was a Christian. And since he never experienced the kind of direct Isu influence that the other assassins did, he likely remained a Catholic till the end of his life. Arno's fate was never directly shown or even hinted at in the game or in any other Assassin's Creed media for that matter. But based on what we do know, we can piece together a reasonable picture. He was born in Versailles to a French father and an Austrian mother, and like most people of that time, he was raised in a Catholic environment. So naturally, Arno was born a Catholic, even if he never seemed deeply religious himself. However, during the French Revolution, when many turned against the church and started seeing it as a symbol of tyranny and corruption, Arno never showed hatred toward God or faith. His motives were personal, not ideological. Yes, he did carry out assassinations inside churches, but never because he was a disbeliever. And the game also never portrays him rejecting God. Throughout most of the story, Arno is weighed down by guilt and loss, yet he never denies the idea of faith or higher purpose. By the end, his beliefs shift towards something broader, a moral code centered on doing what's right, rather than following any institution or ritual. So while Arno wasn't a devout follower, his actions still reflect the core values of belief, compassion, justice, and redemption. Traditionally, we can say that he drifted away from the practices of the faith he was born into, as in that period of time, the world was shifting into modernism, so he likely followed. Just like many assassins of the modern era, Jacob and Evie were both born into a religion, and in their case that was Anglicanism. But much like Arno and several other characters we've talked about, their belief was more on paper than in practice. They're never shown showing any interest in the church or participating in any religious traditions. And since Syndicate takes place in the Victorian era, by this time the assassins already possessed enough knowledge of the world, history, and faith. And as a result, they formed their own understanding understanding of morality, one that went beyond religion. So for the young Frye twins, their focus was never on worship or ritual, but on morality, justice, and doing what's right in a rapidly changing world. In short, Jacob and Evie were Anglicans by birth, but their experiences and the era they lived in shaped them into individuals who chose not to actively follow any religion. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, make sure to let us know in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, goodbye.